Long ago, on the mainland, there was a shunting yard that had 4 trams that ran it. Now most shunting yards during that time were not fond of using steam power or trams for that matter. But this shunting yard really needed the help because they were running low on money and could not afford such modern machines. So they decided that trams were the best option at the moment until they could find something else that would be more suitable for the jobs. But one day, one of the trams was asked to shunt a goods train for an engine that would come to pick it up later that day to take it to Nassford, and that it would be needed to be organized within the hour. The train was happy with the job that they were given because they usually weren't given such an important task. They eagerly went to shunting. After they had finished, the train had come, and they were getting ready to leave. Of course, the switches were not working at the time due to low maintenance, so they had to go figure out which other track they would need to use in order to get to the trucks. After they had finally figured out which track they needed, they slowly headed down the right line over to the trucks and bumped up to them. A huge effort, and then they were off with their train, heading off to the mainland and cross the bridge towards Nassford Station. Soon after they had passed the first station and signals and were heading off to the bridge, and then there they would wait to see if any boats would be crossing under, and then would continue on their way. They arrived at the bridge, but unfortunately the bridge was up to let passing ships go through, so they waited until the bridge had been let down so they could continue on. And then after that, the bridge had been put down, and the guard had blew his whistle, and then they continued on to the station where they would wait to see if any signals had been set against them before continuing on. They soon had approached the station and were pulling into the platform where the signal had been set for red because another engine would be passing with the goods train on the opposite line. Soon they saw the engine come into view. As the engine passed, they could see that it was a tender engine who was in a hurry and was very cross. When they were passing, they hissed steam at the engine and continued on. But they did not approve of this, and they thought that they were just being selfish and arrogant and unfair for them, and so once they were ready to go, they set off to the next station to collect more freight before the end of the line. They were passing through the tunnel and still complaining about what had happened earlier in Vickerstown and how the engine had been unfair to them while they were just sitting there doing nothing to them or towards them that would have made them mad in any kind of way. They had arrived at another station because the engine had to fill up on water and a bit of coal before they could head off again. They also had to make sure that everything had been tightly secured down into the trucks so that way nothing had fallen out during their trip on. Once they had finished securing everything, filled up with coal and water, they then set off to over the hills towards Utrecht and beyond. Soon they were passing Marin, and at the bottom of the hill, gaining speed towards the top so that they could go smoothly down over the other side. They were relieved to have finally reached the top, and then they slowly but steadily made their way over the other side, and then sped down the line, and beyond the next station, hitting past Elsbridge too, and then making it to the station. Soon the engine had arrived at the station, and was then waiting for the anchor and for a shunter at the side to uncouple the truck and put them in the yard. Soon after, they had coupled up to the trucks, and then were arranging them into the siding. Meanwhile, the engine had went to go find a turntable so that they could be turned round so they could head back home over the bridge. Later in the evening, the engine had arrived back on their railway, tired but happy, and they also knew that they had made a new friend too with the shunter, and they were hoping that one day when they returned, they could see the shunter again, and maybe they could do a few trains with them or help them out with another job. But after all, the engine was exhausted, and he would rather have gone to sleep. But he waited in the siding as a goods train passed, and then he slowly moved over to his shed for a good night's sleep. After a few minutes, the engine had finally moved into their shed and back down with their tram friends, and was getting ready for the night sleep that they deserved. They gazed at the evening sky one last time before closing their eyes for the night. And that is the end.